Vamos lá? So let's resume our presentation. Before we actually start, I'd like to... two announcements. Before lunch break, we are going to gather for our official picture, okay, a group picture. And we are also going to sign one of the posters here. We need everyone to sign so we can keep as a memory of this event, okay? So now we are going to continue our presentation. Who's going to this work is co-advised by Huda Duque, but who's going to present is Hugo Melo. Pterosaur specimens from Romualdo Formation, Lower Cretaceous, Araripe Basin, Brazil, with geographic provenance.
Acho que foi. Hello everyone, I'm Hugo. I'm geology student of Federal University of Pernambuco. And this is my colleague and co-supervisor, Huda Duque. Okay, so let's begin. We are going to talk about the Pterosaurs specimens from the Romualdo Formation with geographic provenance. Okay. So, as far as we know, until now, the pterosaurs were the first vertebrates with apparent adaptations for flight. So, one of the most important is the adaptation of pneumatic bones, which is an amazing adaptation, but there is a curse for us as paleontologists because these bones are very delicate. They are really thin, so it's difficult to fossilization. So here we have an example of a pneumatic bone that are phalanx from escorrego that we are preparing. And we see that it's really, really thin. So it's really easy to break and breaks my heart when I see that. So first of all, we need to talk a little bit of the geologic settings of the Romualdo Formation. Well, the Romualdo Formation is located in the Araripe Basin, who is located between Pernambuco, Ceará, and Piauí, and is dated from the Aptian Albian in the Lower Cretaceous, and is located between the CRATO Formation, who is older, and the evaporites of the Ipuí, who is younger. Well, for the paleontology, there is it's really important, the formation. We can, consider fossil Langestatta due to the quantity and diversity of species that were found there. And for pterosaurs, there is a really important characteristic of this formation, which are not really common to see in fossils of pterosaurs, because they are normally flat in rocks. But in the Romualdo Formation, we can find pterosaur bones with 3D preservation. And most of these fossils are found in concretions in shales, And here's the map of the Araripe Basin. Okay. So, for pterosaurs, there are two main groups that we can talk about in the Romualdo formation, the Tapijaridia, the Anhangueridia. But it's the prevalence of the Anhangueridia in the region. So we need to talk a little bit of an undersupply of geographic provenance, or we have in the region, due to many reasons of record fossils not presenting geographic provenance and stratigraphy really detailed. Due to the scientific colonialism in the last century and ineffective supervision of the government, which allows a lot of trafficking and low investment in research and collections. So it's not rare to find fossils from the Romualdo formation in museums or in private collections worldwide. Well, this deficit of data of geographic provenance and stratigraphy shows let us with inaccuracies in geographic spatial temporal distribution and paleo environment reconstruction. So as we can see in old articles, they are not really specific where the fossil were found. It's like somewhere around Ceará, somewhere around the north or Pernambuco. It's not really specific. That means we have a lot of problems when we're trying to recreate a paleo-environmental and get more know about the behavior of them. So there is some examples of fossils that are found in museums around the world from the formation. Well, and for this work, we are considering the geographic provenance fossils with geographic coordinates and the place's name, like if it was found in a site or a quarry. And in the last decade, the number of studies with more accurate stratigraphy and locations of fossils has increased. So if we can collect more and have this data of geoprovenance and stratigraphy, we can explain something like the large diversity of Anhangueridias may indicate tiny adaptations in short periods of time, and if we had more collection, more data, more stratigraphy of these regions, we may for little changes in the evolution and adaptabilities of these animals in the nature. So this is the Araripe Basin and the Romualdo formation. There is darker. Okay. And this is the municipalities that were found fossils from pterosaurs with georeference. In Pernambuco, it was found in Araripina, Ipubi, Exu. And in the Ceará, it was found in Araripe, Santana do Cariri, Crato. And also that there is new discoveries in Simões, in Piauí, but it was not, it's really recent, so we couldn't put. So in Crato, it was found a metacarpal bone with one phalanx in the Romualdus site. In Santana do Cariri, it was found fragments of humeral, pteroid, metacarpal, preaxial, and distal semicarpals and phalanx in the Baixa Grande site. Okay. In the municipality of Exu, it was found one una from the Zé Gomes site. In Araripe, it was found a school from São Gonçalo site. In Araripina, it was found a radius fragment, una metacarpals, carpal, and sesamoids from the Lago de Dentro site. Also in Exu, it was found phalanx of 3 first manual digits and fragments of 4 digits in the Centro site. One rostral fragment from Zé Gomes, and a phalanx from Escorrego site in Ipubi. And in Jardim, it was found one humerus, 2 scapulae, 2 coracoids, 1 vertebra, 1 rib, and a fragment of a pelvic girdle from Sobradinho site. So for these 9 studies, 7 of them present some stratigraphy. So as we can see, most of it consider of shales. It's composed of shales with some concretions and layers of sandstones. Okay. This was us in field work, trying to collect fossils from Exu and Ipubi. Okay, so what we can take from that? Even fragment specimens with poor taxonomy interests are essential when it comes to stratigraphy and paleoenvironment. Even fossils that for the taxonomy, they don't present a lot of information, but if we know where the fossil come from and in which part of the session it was found, it could provide information about the time it was he lives, more precise data. These records that we present are breakthrough and really important for the development of the paleontology of Brazil. But there is a need for more studies for a better understanding of spatial and temporal distribution in the region. So there is a lot to do. We need to collect more. we need to pay more attention for the stratigraphy that was found. There is the place, because we can infer more precisely data like the distribution around the basin, the region, the time of this species live, because when we say is dated from Aptian Albion, there's a lot of time. So there is a lot of variations during this time. And well, we as scientists, we have this collective goal to collect information and create this network. It's not a job we do individual. It's a lot of you help us directly or indirectly to get this information, and it's something that will stay here when we will not be here. It's something that it overcome our lives, and is a mark from the mankind. So for conclude, the construction of a pilot environment could help us to provide information of the evolution and behavior of these amazing creatures during the basin, in the time they lived. So I would like to acknowledge first of all the CRATO PTERO for this opportunity and honor to be here presenting. Oh, sorry. The UFPE and Paleolab in Daugel for all the help. The CNPq, the Museu de Jardim, who help us a lot with a lot of this material we get from there. And this is our team in the Paleogel. So thank you all.
Thank you, Hugo. Do we have questions for him? Lucas.
As the only guy who breaks stuff around here, I want to tranquilize everybody. I'm not asking if I can break any of your stuff, but I wanted to ask you, did you see any differences in groups from a locality to another? I mean, are there more Anhanguerians, let's say, in Jardim, or any other group?
So I don't think we have enough data to infer more precisely. It's more open, but what we can see is that in the homolog formation, there is a prevalence of these Anhanguerides in general. So there is a lot of difference between the Anhanguerides, but we don't have enough collection and information to say what was the changes and what places they were. So it's a work in process.
Any other questions, Juliana?
First of all, I would like to congratulate you. You are a student, undergrad student, presenting here your results of your research, so congrats for that. I would like to make a small comment, so you can think about that when you come back and and made your research, looking only the geographically position of the specimen doesn't tell you too much, because in the past, there's no boundaries. So the environment changes along the basin. It's a huge basin. So we expect to find different things in different areas, okay? You have to look at the stratigraphic position of these fossils, because going to a mining or a museum, take a specimen, the people say, this comes from that place. Most of those specimens at the museums are even collected from that, are collected from every other people. So most of these information are not precise. So what we should do to solve the questions that you bring about ecology, environmental, and geographic distribution, you should make excavations and see from which level came those fossils. No, you are very close in Recife to many places with Romualdo formation occurring. So you have all the structure, you are a geology department, so go to field and make the excavations. This is the best way to solve your question. Because up to now, despite this occurrence that you bring us, and it's great to even know from where these fossils came, only 2 specimens, and you're not even mentioning that, have this stratigraphic information. One is Villanova, 2011, and the other is Kellner, because we do the excavations and we found the pterosaur in that level. So we can make expand the kind of speculations, scientific speculations you might do. So Huda, you are there. Congratulate for the advising the guy. Go to field and find the specimens. That's what I can say to you.
Well, it's part of the profession to go to field work. We were in Zé Gomes and did excavation this month in the beginning, and we did our best in the terms we have, because we don't have support for that. So we did the excavation all by ourselves, and it's really hard to dig. So we took like 3 days to do excavation of 2 meters, a little bit less than that. And we, as a group with different areas of paleontology and geologists and biologists, we are working together to get this information with the resources that we have. So that there is a real importance of the stratigraphy, but sometimes it's hard. So when we get more collection, when we collect more and more, it's a job of various groups of paleontologists. We could infer more precisely, and with time and with stratigraphy are much common to find those types of fossils, those types of pterosaurs.
For people who don't know, in the Araripe, mostly in the Romualdo, there is not a quarry. You have to make holes from the soil to down. So it's very hard to do that.
And I'd like to compliment Juliana's comments, saying that sometimes not even excavations are the best way to handle that, because the Romualdo has the additional hardship of being very varied laterally. So sometimes you think that because you're looking at the same sediments, let's say in CRATO and Araripina, that you are looking at the same levels, and that is not true. The best way to identify Romualdo is finding the Ipubi, which is not everywhere. So then you have a good control that you are in the base of the Romualdo but you don't have the best control if you are in the middle. You don't have the best control if you are on the top. But in the top also you have the coquinas, which are another homogeneous level. So the secret to understand the stratigraphy of where you are is looking for the specific levels. Let's say the coquinas for the top, the gypsum for the bottom, but then you go to Sobradinho and there's no gypsum at the bottom. You're gonna have straight CRATO. So that's a huge complication when you're working with excavations. So if you have outcrops, try to take the best of them because they're not common, but they are the best way to handle the stratigraphy of the entire formation.
So what we do sometimes, we go to places with the mineralization of a gypsite, and we go there to see the stratigraphy, because normally if it's recent, it's really clear, and it's something that we normally do because it's make easier our job. But even that, sometimes if it was a part they already taken, you lose a part of this stratigraphy precise.
And when you go there, you don't see a lot of the black shale from the Sobradinho site, right?
Yeah.
Because the environments are very different. So that is, I think that's the best way to demonstrate how hard it is to work with stratigraphy in the Romualdo through excavations, is when you look at it at Sobradinho and when you look at it at the quarries in the gypsum site.
Vou falar em português, o Hugo pode traduzir depois. Alguns achados desse, a gente trabalha mais quase 10 anos lá no Araripe, muitos, principalmente na parte pernambucana, encontrado em sítio, a gente tem que escavar. E alguns são em pedreiras que já tem o perfil aberto. A gente limpa e faz o perfil. O trabalho é principalmente para invertebrados, microfósseis, mas algumas vezes a gente encontra pterossauros. Também já ocorreu em sítio. Quando a gente encontrou em sítio, escavou para fazer um perfil. Em Sobradinho, já tem lá 50 metros exposto. Esse material que está aí foi o pessoal do Museu do Jardim que encontrou, mas ele mostrou onde foi encontrado, a gente foi lá, procurou mais. Tem outros na coleção deles, mas não necessariamente todos sabem de onde veio. Por isso que a gente pegou só esses, que a gente sabe de onde saiu. Tentamos comparar todos os perfis para ver se tem continuidade lateral e não foi possível. A gente conseguiu encontrar coquina, correlacionar as coquinas, mas eu acho que ainda é muito cedo para a gente fazer uma correlação lateral entre, acho que 9 perfis, que são 7 perfis. Tá?
Is everybody okay if I just answer to him in Portuguese? Eu fui no Santo Antônio. Valeu pela escavação lá, porque ajudou demais com esses níveis de coquinas que a gente tinha bastante dificuldade de encontrar. E nós encontramos algumas populações de ostracodes lá que a gente até agora só viu no Santo Antônio mesmo.
Em Zé Gomes já foi achado 2 pterossauros. Aí em Santo Antônio a gente já fez 3 escavações para ver se encontra pterossauros, mas ele está dando microfóssil, nanofóssil, invertebrados. Aí lá é uma localidade boa, né? Fica em Araripina, né? Não, é Exu, município de Exu.
Santo Antônio é Exu.
So thank you, Hugo. Next presenter is Professor Juliana Manso Sayão, and the title of her presentation is Pterosaurs in Antarctica. Are occurrences rare or biased?
Hi, good morning. Well, nobody knows me. I'm Juliana, actually the host of this meeting. So thank you, first of all, for coming here. So I will talk to you this morning of one of lines of my research that I dedicate the few years, which is paleontology of Antarctica. Actually, we started in 2005, and in the last almost 10 years, I have been working with Professor Kellner and our colleagues a lot in that area. So, Antarctica, as you might know, is considering one of the last frontiers of knowledge of our planet. Well, we can go to space, but it's not Earth, so Antarctica is one of the most remote areas of our country. When you talk of Antarctica, Antarctic people say that it is a land of superlatives because everything, it's more there. It's the more windy region. There are registered winds of 100 knots over there. It's even the coldest area in the planet. In the central Antarctica was recorded temperatures under 18 degrees Celsius. It's almost the most inhospitable area in the Earth. Here you can see our camp. Yes, we do camp in Antarctica to collect fossils, no stations, no other constructions to help us, only our tents. It holds 19% of the permanent ice of the planet. And also, it's a very, very, very difficult area to access, not only for logistics, but also from bureaucratic. We have to do a lot of paperwork to be there and could make research and collect our fossils. Just to know, we should make a plan. We should take a plan, then a Zodiac boat, then a ship, then a helicopter, sometimes also a Zodiac boat again, so we reach the land to do our job. And everything back up to come back home safety. So it's really hard to be there, unless you had $20,000 to buy a very fancy cruise to Antarctica, which is not the case of researchers, not even Brazilian researchers. Well, Antarctic sedimentary deposits stand out for their potential for new discoveries and correlate temporally and geographically with deposits in New Zealand. As we know, they form in the past the Gondwana land, where Antarctica is here, and the future New Zealand, not formed at that moment, not formally formed at that moment, being here very close to most of the area that we work looking for fossils. During the Upper Cretaceous, these continental mesas were part of a set of islands of the Antarctic Peninsula. Although the related Tahora Formation, you can see here, in New Zealand presents a wide collection of fossil reptiles, including dinosaurs, saurischians, and ornithischians, and also asdarcoids pterosaurs. When we look from the Cretaceous of Antarctica, the specimens are less known. Fossil vertebrates in Antarctica are considerably rare, especially when it comes to pterosaurs. We found the remains of fossil vertebrates are very incomplete and in many cases difficult to interpret. We see here like a mass of bones found in the ground. For this reason, recent studies have used osteohistological analysis to identify these fragments. See? Something looks like a bone, but I don't know what exactly it was. one of those examples are really recent, a research made by Brun and colleagues, published this year, take some small of those fragments I showed you in the slide before and proceed bone histology analysis. And we find a kind of interesting things. This fragment doesn't tell us anything, but this, and also Lucas, I'm also the one who destroyed the fossils because I need to cut them to find this kind of information. So when we look at bone histology, sometimes they have exclusive things that provide us the identification of that fragment. In this case, was a dinosaur, ankylosaur dinosaur. Well, as you know, the pterosaur record is quite patchy, with few deposits forming the most recovered specimens and the taxonomic diversity. Alex Kellner has already told us this in this lecture in the first day. And most of them are most of our knowledge is biased by a few fossil lagerstätten. The first mention of this flying, next please. The first mention of these flying reptiles in Antarctica is a humerus, this one, but please come back to the other slide. Volta por favor. Volta. The first mention of these flying reptiles in Antarctica is a humor recovered from the lower Cretaceous of Falla Formation. Please pay attention in this information. Falla Formation here was published by Hammer and Hickson in the 94. So the only mention of pterosaurs in this paper, which deals of dinosaurs, is this phrase. The collection also contains the humerus of a pterosaur, perhaps dimorphodontid, and a single molar formalized trilodontid, which is not a pterosaur. Few years later, the same authors, 5 years later, figured the specimen they mentioned before, but doesn't give us any descriptions, detailed descriptions, or even a phrase talking about this humerus. After that, recently, Kellner and colleagues questioning if this bone, whether reported a pterosaur or not, because from 1999 to 2019, nobody ever mentioned this fossil again. More than 20 years later, other fragments attributed to the appendicular skeleton were reported from the late Cretaceous deposits from James Ross Archipelago. Who knows this guy? Is he there in the audience? So Professor Kellner found a couple of bones in our fieldwork. I will talk more about this later. Here I present a briefly comment on the factors that might explain the lack of pterosaur material in Antarctica. The undisputed records of pterosaur from Antarctica was collected during 2 separate expeditions of the Paleontar project. Here is the Paleontar project, which is leading for Dr. Kellner and I, and myself. The first was held in the Santa Marta Cove. Here is a scheme, the James Island, Vega Island, Snow Hill Island, and Seymour. Together they form the James Ross Archipelago. So this fieldwork was held here in Santa Marta Cove, this part. In January to February of 2016, and among the osteological material collected are 2 rather unusual bones that seems to represent the same element. They were found in the large moraine in Albertini Flats, a flat area located between Passo San Jose and Crane Cove, the highest peak of James Ross Island. The rock in this area belonged to Santa Marta Formation. Here we have a little bit stratigraphy with areas marked as the formations, the group they become. And Santa Marta Formation, more specifically to the Upper Cretaceous Lachman Craig's member, Santonian companion in age. This specimen also, the first specimen also was submitted to osteohistological analysis, and I will talking about this later with you. The second occurrence consists of an incomplete bone lacking articulation recovered from the snow hill formation, Maastrichtian in age, at the Vega Island, this place here. This place here, yeah, next. So here's the picture of the team of the first expedition. We called Operantar 35. Operantar is the field work in Antarctica according to the Brazilian Antarctic program. Here you can see familiar faces like Thaisa, Dr. Kellner, and myself. No, we do not buy the clothes at the same place. They are given to us by the Antarctic program. So Thaisa, don't worry about that. Next. This is the place where the second field work was done in Vega Island. Here is our camp again. And the pterosaur fossils are found close to the camping site. So here are the records. This is one part of the first from James Ross Island. Here, marked the place where he found. And the yellow one from Vega Island. Well, the possible indeterminate record of the humors from the central transantarctic mountains, although figured by Hammer and Hickinson, it still awaits the detailed description. Its controversial occurrence involved not only its identification, but as a pterosaur, but also the stratigraphic unit it was collected, because the authors in 1919 mentioned that was not called in Fala Formation, but in Hanson Formation. So they even know where the fossil they had become from. And this is very distinct places, units in age and paleo environments. The specimen, the first, this one from James Ross, were not collected in situ as the other one, but were found to be eroded at the surface, a common feature of fossil bones collected from moraines of the James Ross archipelago. The specimens comprise the articulation preserved in 3D, this one, anterior and posterior views. The articulation expanded, forming a typical boot-shaped configuration. I think is the next one. No, but come back. A boot-shaped configuration and corresponds to the distal end of phalanges belonging to pterosaur wing finger. This is one part. The other part, they are found together, and we think this is the shallow bone of this one. So we do osteohistological analysis in this part. We take one sample here, and another here. Only this one give us a good result, because these other two are too thin, and we lost it during the slab preparation. So what we see is a typical pterosaur osteohistology with many vascular canals with the osteocytes lacunae around, not forming secondary osteons, but the typical fibrolamellar bone. And the interesting feature of this specimen is the presence of this outer layer called external fundamental system. The presence of this layer tell us that this specimen has already reached his asymptotic growth. So this specimen was an individual that almost had reached his larger size, cannot grow anymore. Here, the comparisons with the parts of the phalanx we have. So it's a first wing phalanx. The second specimen consists of a long bone without articulations, as you can see in the picture, that was recovered from the debris resulting from the terrible fire that hit the Museu Nacional in 2018. Originally, this was not the color of the bone, but the color was changed, and some fissures were developed on the surface due to the fire. the high temperatures. The transverse section of this specimen is D-shaped. You can see here in this view. This bone was interpreted as a winged metacarpal, possibly belonging to a large pterosaur, but we cannot assert from who taxa it belongs. So we said it is a large pterodactyloid, and we estimate the wingspan from 4 to 5 meters. And no bone histological data is available about it. Well, access to Mesozoic deposits in Antarctica is extremely restricted, most due to the Antarctic preservation policy dictated by the Antarctic Treaty. Carrying out of science research in this area are controlled, requiring approval from the signatory countries of the treaty. As you see, Brazil is one of them. For this reason, we are allowed to do research in Antarctica. As a result of this treaty, the prospecting and collection of vertebrate fossils, mainly pterosaur, is a trend largely dictated by the interests of each country of research groups that develops its activity in the area. Here, annual meeting of the consulting countries when the policy and the researchers, they decide the policies and which researchers could be held in Antarctica in which area. And here the Brazilian Antarctic program, who last year complete 40 years. In addition, ice-free localities are restricted to a small region. Here, the James Ross Island map, you can see only the brown areas are the areas without permanent ice, the areas available for field trip work. Most of them are in the eastern portion of northern Antarctica Peninsula, more specifically in the northeast part of James Ross Island archipelagos, as the example of James Ross Islands. Here, this area I was talking about you. So, most of these outcrops becomes to Larsen Basin, which are in the austral summer exposed and available for fieldwork. The James Ross Subbasin sedimentary are formed during the breakup of the Gondwana and have one of the most complete sedimentary sequences from the Cretaceous to the Paleogene of the southern hemisphere. The best, let me tell again, the best, most complete sedimentary sequences of the south hemisphere is in an area restricted to access. Fossil vertebrates from James Ross archipelago are usually found fragmented and rolled with erosion marks in their surface, as observed in both specimens we collected, both pterosaur specimens we collected, and also in all of those samples we have collected previously. The exposure time in soil can be so long that some already shows traces of chemical modifications on the external surface of bone, which indicates the diffusion of silicates from the fossiliferous matrix of the fossil fragments, characterizing its inclusion in pedogenical process, as observed previously by Bantin. Bantin is there? Fugiu there. And colleagues. And a paper with Nayara sitting there is finishing to be submitted, and hope we had a lot of information about this process in recent times. This dynamic could be a crucial factor in destroying possible records of pterosaurs, which have delicate bones, as my colleague told before my presentation, and can suffer more pressures from the environment. As the pedogenic process advances, the probability of reworking this fossiliferous material increases with their future incorporation to new Antarctic soils. So this record is not very good, and we are losing it year after year. So they are rare, and we need them, as a character of a film that most of you might know. Well, to conclude, there are a few reasons that can account of the rare occurrence of pterosaurs in Antarctica. First, there are only few researchers only with fossil vertebrates in the sparse Mesozoic outcrops, which limits the geographic area sample. Two, the age of these rocks, which mostly correspond to the end of the Cretaceous periods, ranging from the Centennial to Maastrichtian, as the square marker here. At that time, global pterosaur record was already in decline, becoming more restricted to some portions of the planet, such as the Laurasian lands, according to Petland and Poropat in their huge recent work, taking account all the records of pterosaur around the world in Jurassic and Cretaceous age. So this, in this image, they summarize the result of their research, and we can see that in the lower Cretaceous, we had more pterosaur occurrences than at the end of the Cretaceous, where they become extinct. Third, at the end of Cretaceous, the diversity of taxa also decreases, with the Asdarchid being the prevalent group. What we can do to solve this scenario? To expand the record of pterosaurs and other fossil reptiles in Antarctica, it is necessary to continue prospecting systematically in areas that we already know, but also in new ones that are exposed each year because, unfortunately, of the global warming, which leads to contraction of glaciers. So I would like to thank you all, the other people from the organizing committee. Many thanks. I don't know if you know, but I'm not living in CRATO, I'm living in Rio de Janeiro, and the local committee helps everything to bring you this event. So thank you, guys. Não sei se vocês me entenderam, meninos, mas eu estou agradecendo a todos vocês pela ajuda que nos deram. Muito obrigada. The other institutions, the Paleoantar Project, the Brazilian Antarctic Program, Museu Nacional, our institution, and our budget, our financials. Also, I would like to thank to everyone who come join us in this symposium, and especially to this young girl, Bettina, my daughter, because she waits for long months when her mother is in Antarctica doing field works, looking for fossils. So almost 3 months outside home every year. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Juliana, for your talk. Questions? Joseph.
It's nice to be the question guy here.
Was the purported dimorphodonid from, I guess, Hammer's work when Cryolophosaurus was found, or is that?
Yeah, first they told was the first site, but after then they changed because they came from different formations. The Cryolophosaurus come from one, and that pterosaur from another, according to the second paper, because we don't know actually.
Right. Okay.
They changed their mind.
Right. That makes sense.
Anyone else? I don't think so. So thank you, Juliana. And now the last talk in this section, yes. Alexander Kellner, the title of his presentation is The Reopening of the Museu Nacional, the National Museum, in 2026. What now?
This invitation to be here today. Actually, I was just planning to have a very small discussion and presentation about what the Museu Nacional is doing to recover its collections, to recover, its importance for the country. But I decided, since I saw all those young faces, to change my presentation a little bit. I will not only talk and provide you with information about where we stand, rebuilding the oldest scientific institution of Brazil, but also just to point a couple of things that all of you should be aware of, because I once was you, sitting there as a student, looking at all the people that are working in an institution, actually managing them, and a couple of things change, particularly when accidents happen. But nevertheless, it's very important that those who can make the difference, that those who have the drive, the knowledge, their contacts, and the spirit, the public spirit, should take over some of those institutions. Because if you don't do that, nothing's going to change. And guess who is going to be in the next 10, 20 years? You. So talking about the Museu Nacional, very briefly, I think this goes forward. No. I think this one goes forward. Yes. It's situated in one of the nicest places, or I like to say democratic place in Rio de Janeiro, in a park with over 550,000 square meters, where people can just go, have a nice time without spending lots of money. It's in the a northern part of the city, access with metro, train, and different places in different ways. But it's just a wonderful park. And actually, with that slide, I could end my presentation just like that. It is a winning project. It can't fail. Look at that. Look at the place where we are located. And of course, there's so much history with that palace. It was once, yes, the house of a merchant who was dealing with the most common goods at that time, slavery. That's something we need to address in our future exhibitions. And it has been changed along the years by John VI, the King of Portugal, that bravely went to Brazil when Napoleon was invading Portugal. We have Peter the First, Peter the Second. Yes, we did have two emperors, and they both lived there. And John VI essentially inaugurated, created the museum on June 6, 1818, which was then located in a different place. It was located in the Campo de Santana, downtown of Rio de Janeiro. But then the Republic was called out, and Peter II, this really great Brazilian, was invited to leave. So when he left, there was a lot of changes being made in that building, and it was partially being destroyed by the Republicans because they wanted to kind of, cancel all what has to do with imperial time of Brazil. And some very bright people from the Republican side and also from the academic side decided then to move the museum there in order to protect the building and in order to protect a little bit of our history. So the museum moved there in 1892. But I always want to point this out, and some of you know that we had a, how I put it, a very interesting government the last few years. So there have been some people thinking, why we don't make the museum, kind of an imperial museum, so, after the accident. But I always want to stress that even before the Museu Nacional occupied those premises, the point was there always was a place for culture, a place for natural history, due to particularly the act of Peter II, who is kind of a mecenas for science and culture, and he kept in that palace what is now known as the Museum of the Emperor. He had stuffed animals, he had libraries, he had ethnographic material, and even a mummy from Shah Amun Ensu in his office. So this is very important for us. That palace always was a temple for natural history and anthropology. even before the museum arrived there. Now, I also have to point that out. It's a very long story. I will not bother with all of the details, but there's a reason why I'm stressing this here today, particularly for the younger generation. I assumed the museum in February 7th, 2018. Yes, 6-7 months before the tragedy. And the first thing I did, guess what? I screamed. I put it out loudly, the difficulties the museum was passing through. And of course, I was very well known in by reporters all over, so it was more easy for me to do that. So that was 2 weeks, essentially, after I get in office. And just talking about 2018, which was such a wonderful year. 200 years of the Museu Nacional. We had so much expectation. We wanted change. This is why a new administration came into office. And our first present we got was from the Imperatriz Leopoldinense, who at that year had on the parade what is called uma noite real no Museu Nacional, a royal night at the National Museum. And it was wonderful. We had the opportunity to even host meetings with those people for training. And my reason to point that out to you today is not only was it for most of those people from the town of Ramos, from the region of Ramos, where the Imperatriz is located, it was not only the first time they came to the Museu Nacional. It was actually the first time they visited any museum. This stressed the importance of rebuilding that institution. And to see the Museu Nacional at the parade on February 13, 2018 was just wonderful. Yes, the director was there as well. No, I did not bring any picture of my costume. Then came September 2nd, a time we want to put behind. Not forget, we must learn with our mistakes. But okay, it's enough. Let's now look forward. Let's now, how can we show the world that we actually can do better? And in that sense, we had this, the impact was tremendous. There was, as far as I'm concerned, no country in the world that did not had a headline saying the tragedy that happened in Brazil with this important museum. Because actually, if you think about it, it's not only our tragedy. It's not only something exclusive of Brazil. We had material from Egypt, from Portugal, from Germany, from Austria, and so on, so from South America, textile collections, wonderful mummies from the Andean region. So we really had a lot of material from other countries, from other cultures. So it was really of great, great impact. And, well, what is left? What would you do? I'm just a paleontologist, like you guys are, or pretending to be, some of you. So what is left? What was left? Well, a lot of attention. That's for one. We got a lot of attention, and I have to be honest with you, not everyone can say that he received the makeup service by Sonia Brady, one of the most famous reporter in Brazil, working Fantástico. But media can be kind of tricky, There are good things and there are other things which are interesting, let me put it that way. And I just would like to stress the date of this year. That's September 3rd, 2018. Less than 24 hours, there was a group, calling them the Feira Medieval Carioca, who was already gathering money without talking to us, and to the wrong museum. Can you imagine that? You don't even know how to walk, and then suddenly someone's starting to cash in without even kind of asking, and even putting the wrong museum. Interesting. Nonetheless, there are some other things which are a little bit more, honestly, could have I said that to stay naked in front of the Congress? That wasn't really the embarrassing part. The embarrassing part was to receive that from my mother-in-law. But the other things, we were in a very interesting moment. You all know about the disputes that kind of increased. And then, to get something like that, when the director is trying to get the financial resources, I mean, Trump, work very hard. Trump, oh, come on, guys, do something different. And there was something even more interesting, kind of putting myself as belonging to a part and almost telling that I have to be exterminated. Wow. One of the things I did when I started was to expose the situation of the Museu Nacional. So my office was in one of the rooms that was closed for, 15 years or so. And they made it my office of the director, which had lots of beauty and problems. And it was really funny because when I had my meetings there, people were kind of embarrassed. Oh, wow, a lot of leakage. And I said, what do you feel when you're inside here? And people, kind of, what I say? Oh, beautiful. Oh, maybe some paintings. And I said, that's the room. It shows the museum. We do have a lot of potential. We have grandeza, as we say in Brazil. So we have this, but we do have problems. Let's work on the problems. And then, at some point, you see a very important newspaper, Global, with this kind of comments that the director was in this wonderful place with no peeling walls and didn't care for the rest of the museum. That's kind of interesting to receive this kind of news from a very, very important reporter. I have to be honest with you. When the guy was fired, I was kind of happy. I preferred him to be fired by that because he never apologized. And those things are, complex for someone that's trying to rebuild the museum. And so we go. But things get even more interesting when you start to get this kind of letters from the opinion public. Just put it all down before the director takes the money. Let's just put it, erase it, and do something else. Even that happened. I mean, there's some example. Well, that's not the worst, at least for me. The worst is when it comes from colleagues. And here we'll give an example, which is really, I'm sorry, that really pissed me off. That really made me very angry. There was someone who had a paper, because I happen to be also the chief editor of a very important magazine, the Annals of the Brazilian Academy of Science, the sole multidisciplinary journal of Brazil. We publish anything from dinosaur physics, anthropology, biodiversity, molecular biology. And what happened? Someone was a little bit upset with decisions that had to be made because we have some rules. This person did not respect the rules and essentially was saying, oh my goodness, I have to pay for some of the figures, which I will show you. And then another paleontologist says that. That's a paleontologist. That's not a crazy person around. No, I'm a grandpa. That's a colleague. And this person there are two different persons, so the same person made that comment. Isn't that wonderful? And why? Because we do have rules. This person has submitted a paper with 126 pages plus 60 supplementary pages plus 26 images, while we very clearly say that you can't extend over 50 pages, and anything that goes beyond 5 figures is going to be charged. We open access, we don't charge for publication. It's open. And, well, and so we go. E assim vamos. Nonetheless, that was my feeling. What else need to happen? Only the asteroid. Now, what is left? Actually, what is left is something quite different. Yes, bad things, good things, but what is really left? And here's where I want to stress. We do have now something we didn't want, but we have an opportunity. We have an opportunity to rebuild a natural history and anthropological institution that can become an inspiration for other such institutions, not only in Brazil, in South America. Because here I see my colleague from Argentina, the Natural History Museum over there is also not in that very good shape. I got lots of reports from other institutions in South America, which are, you know, which also would are in a very risky position. So where are we? Very good. We have this project, the Projeto Museu Nacional Vive, and we have got lots of support, yes, from the government, but also from the university, from the foundation, from the Vale Foundation, which is now the Instituto Cultural Vale, BNDES, UNESCO, also private banks, Bradesco, and also from some other institutions like the Association of the Friends of the Museu Nacional, CAPS, Germany. Germany spent €1 million for us, what's really wonderful. A good institute, FAPERJ, you know, with all the difficulties we had, they essentially gave a small budget. It's at that time 3,000 reais, I don't know, something around maybe $500, something monthly for 1 year for all the researchers. And it made a difference because they had so much difficulties at that point, the FAPERJ. Not to talk about British Council also came helping in Instituto Camões, IBRAM, Allerge, French also, French culture also made some contributions, and there have been others. Smithsonian Institute had gathered a possibility for 1 month for a couple of our students, so we got some very important support. And what is actually the main of this project? What is the Museu Nacional now? We have 3 different areas. That's the area of the palace. It's an older picture. This is the hill in this park that ends over here. We do have another part, which is the botanical garden, and we do have an area of 44,400 square meters, an area that we always dreamed of because the Museu Nacional knew the problems. We wanted to take everything out of the building, reorganize everything, the academic part, the scientific part, the collections, and restore the building to be a great area of exhibition of natural history, anthropology, with this important aspect of history. So now we have it. It could have been sooner, couldn't it? But we have it. It's there. And this terrain, we got resources. It's already being implemented. We actually, the office of the director is there, and we are going on with different areas for the departments. Now, let's talk about money, budget. We actually already have from the 445 million reais that we need, we actually have already 60% promised. When I say promise, it's because the money has to go in, you know, for it has to come in. But there were contracts signed and it's promised. So we are still about 180 million short, and we need to look for that. But the biggest difference came with the visit of the President Lula, who came to the museum and made us essentially a request. And his request was, you guys wanted to open the museum, wanted to reform the museum. in different phases, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and phase 4. But what he wanted is to have the greatest part of the museum open in April 26. Honestly, we always dreamed of that. We wanted to open the museum in parts, but why wasn't it prepared? Why wasn't it organized in such a way? Because it's more expensive. So we need a little bit more money than the budget we showed you. But the point here is that now we have changed completely our strategy. We are working in order to have this portion open. Actually, the facades and the rules of what we call the historical part of the museum is ready. And we're already starting with the works on Wing 2 and on Wing 3, and eventually we also work on Wing 4. So again, what is to be ready in 2026? And I hope to see some of you there. It's going to be in April 26, all these portions over here. But in order for me to have this open, we need Wing 2 and Wing 3. Why? Because the big change of the museum is not only on the security level, but also on the way the visitors is experiencing the museum. It's not going to be one of those small places where you kind of, you don't really know how to walk around. There's a lot of rules you have to obey. It is an old building. It is an old building. It's not really ideal for a natural history museum, but that's what we have. We need to have a lot of not only security measurement, but also accessibility. And believe me, that takes room. But we have to do it, and we are doing it. Now, step 1, as I said, it's done. That's the museum now. If you go there, that's what you see. And it was a lot of work. We already starting with Wing 2 and 3, and hopefully, sometime we're going to finish it this year. This year, not next year. And then we have to, we also want to do something which will be really impressive. We want to open a tiny portion of the museum composed of essentially 2 rooms next June 6th of next year. And the idea is to have what today is the room we call from Bendegar. Here you see the stairway on that. So we want to have that room open. It will not be complete, but there will be a way that people can see how restoration is being done. So there's going to be restored, and people will be able to experience that. But we want to have that portion here with the monumental stairway. It's just a fantastic place. It's going to have a glass ceiling, and yes, with a way. We lost our way, but we have a new one, and it's already there, and it's mounted in the Cidade das Artes in Rio de Janeiro, 15.5 meters. So we're very proud of it. And that also was done due to FUNBIO and also due to the German government. So this is what we want to present in June 25. Every facade, every roof, everything ready, including of Wing 4 in terms. So everything this will be ready. We want to have the gardens ready, at least this one. Yes, the annex, there's still, we can't have it completely ready, but what we want is to have it functional for the palace. Now, we had also to make a big changes in the museography. Originally we were planning to have the historical portion. I mean, that would be floor 1, essentially entrance, introduction. Would have an historical portion, and then we would have on floor 3 space, a large space for temporary exhibits, and on the Wing 4, we would have cultural diversity, environments of Brazil, and also all that has to do with the evolution and origin of a planet and biodiversity, both recent and past. But this has to be changed now. We will have to have a temporary exhibit from 26 to 28 when we actually will hope to have the complete museum ready. So but what are we going to show? We will have an introduction part, about 300 square meters. We have an educational part with a little over 400 square meters ready. That's on floor 1. On floor 2, we will have the historical rooms with biodiversity, roughly around 1,200 square meters. And on the 3rd floor, we will have cultural diversity, and also a place roughly about 500 square meters for temporary exhibits. So if you have one, we want it. And this will cost, for those roughly 2,900 square meters of exhibit, and here I'm only mentioning the introduction and what we're planning for floors 2 and 3, and here we need to find another 8.9 million reais. And that was, guess what? The bill we gave to the ministry. You want it? Help us. We need that resources. So what do you think is our biggest challenge? I can't resist. What do you think is our biggest challenge? Resources. You don't count. You don't count. What do you think? What is the biggest challenge of these paleontologists, these poor paleontologists just standing in front of you, having to organize a large crew to rebuild the museum? What's the biggest challenge? Exactly, rebuilding their collection, which of course now gets really kind of pressing, isn't it? I mean, 2026 is around the corner. I need material. I need specimens, because otherwise I will not be able to open it. And this is why we had this campaign we are launching, Recompõe. This was already launched in 2019. We put it a little bit in a low profile. I have some flyers here, which I will give to some of you, and to others I will not give. I will just shovel it to. Sorry. But the point being is, I need collections, and no, it's not only material from Brazil. I need it from outside, from other places, and maybe even specimens that I never had. You know, imagine to have a small corner in the biggest and most, it's gonna be the most modern museum in natural history and anthropology in South America. It's going to happen, guys. So because we need to know the world around us, that's the only way we start making questions. That's only the way we will have the notion of what and why we need to preserve anything. Of course, we also need everyone to dream about the future, to dream about what we can do. And here we have collections. What we have, the previous exposition was about 4,400 square meters. We used a little bit less than 3,300, and we had exposed on display 5,774 items, because we counted on a regular basis. We had that control. And our next exhibit will be something around 5,500 square meters. Roughly 3,000 is going to need to be open in 2026. And here I need to have a little bit of the whole museum. I cannot only open the historical part, and we are looking for 10,000 objects. So very briefly, this is the circuits we have: the historical, cultural diversity, universe life circuit, environments of Brazil. We have the breakage about roughly the items that we need there. And this is being planned, this is being worked on. We already got some donation. That was the first most important one. That was from Wilson Savino back in 2019, if I recall it right. He's from Fiocruz, and he had a wonderful, fantastic material from Africa. We are very happy to have it. It's already by us. We already got some individuals that made some donations. Francis Reynolds gave us some textile. Julio Landman, some archaeological material. And I have to tell you, with my deepest joy, we got an original painting of Leopoldina. I just got it today. It's here. It's in Brazil. We just sent me today. They're going to arrange it. No, it's not a very big one, but it's an original one, someone we never had. And Leopoldina is, I cannot talk lots about her, a very important person for Brazil. We also got from a singer, Nando Reis, a collection of mollusks. And honestly, when he sent us something, oh, I have this collection, we were kind of saying, oh my goodness, the things he might be collecting, going on the beach or whatever. No, that was actually well taken care of with the places it was collected, when it was collected. So actually it's helping us a lot. Some of this might be on display, but it's also helping us scientifically. The museum had some 20 million specimens. We lost 85% of it. And now we need to recover. We don't want to recover 20 million, you cannot recover 200 years of collection in a couple of years. It's not going to happen. But the most important aspects of the museum, and here we need national and international support. This is a fantastic idea that was done by a firefighter. It's David Lopes. And I remember when he was just storming my office, I have an idea. I'm a firefighter, and I also make instruments. I would like some of, the burnt wood. And I say, oh, come on. That's never gonna work. It did. The guy made 6 instruments. He's aiming for another 6. They all belong to the museum. And there was even a documentary made. It's really a very, very interesting way to help the museum, isn't it? And now we are just discussing what's gonna happen with the instruments he made. Or we may auction that. If I'm the director, no. I would like to have some, beneficiary concerts with important, singers, and to have perhaps donations for the institution. And also we got this really very, very generous collection of Fernando Cassitori. It's essentially a Greco-Roman objects, 25 ones, that could be in any place, in any museum in the world. And some of those specimens are much better than the ones we had. So we're very thankful for those private individuals that are helping us. And we also got a donation from institutions from Austria. That was the first international donation we got in 2020. Yes, it was when COVID was, starting. I was in this trip, didn't know if I would come back. But anyway, we got that. It's roughly 197 indigenous material, which some researchers from Austria did in less than 100 years ago in Brazil. They collected it, they had it there. Those guys contacted us and say, you know what, it's better with you. So we had this material, no problem, no big issue, very simple direct contact. And it's with us. We also got donations from the Senckenberg Museum, 1,500 insects. Some of them are important for research, others gonna be on display. We got a whale. Yes, it's not really a whale, but you get the picture, it's Moby Dick. It's a spermaceti, but it has 15.5, actually 15.7 meters. That's the one we're gonna hang on the ceiling. And here there was, the Fumbio was fantastic. There have been a lot of individuals helping us, but also the German government who essentially supported the mounting of that material. And we got some new acquisition. That's a coelacanth. It's a cast of a coelacanth. I don't really like casts very much, but coelacanths, I understand that's the only way we're going to get them. We're never going to get an original. They're too rare at this point. And we had one, and so the Museum d'Histoire Naturelle just sent us that material. And here are several people that have made their contributions, from small things, from big things, and the list is increasing. And it can increase more. It can increase more. We have room for lots of more individuals or institutions that might be able to help us. So what we need: natural history material, meteorites, material that express biodiversity, archaeological material, minerals, fossils, and also some rare items which are very hard to get. But a natural history museum cannot survive without original material. So the good news is we are building a space over 5,000 square meters, so you can get your containers ready, because this is going to be ready next year. We have the space. We will have the space. It's a very expensive building, because we have the best security measurements that we can imagine. We had to work in close contact with the firefighters, because they don't know what to do with us. And actually, once it's ready, it's going to be something we want to distribute around South America, because it's an incredible experience, and we'd love to share it so other people don't have to pass the problems that we did. And of course, kids want their museum back. Kids want their museum back. We get letters, so it's up to us to make it happen. And with that, I would like to point out something which is very dear to me, which is also part of the problem where the museum has to look inside, where the museum had to make internal discussion. Did we actually have this really good dialogue with the society? Did they know what we mean? Did we know what we are important for, why they should spend lots of money in order to support us? So this is something very important, particularly for the young generation. We need an institution that works with the public. We need to establish a dialogue. And dialogue is not teaching, it's listening more than talking. And the other point is, on the other hand, you also have to show the society that if they don't value, if they don't invest in their scientific and cultural institution, at least from the cultural side, they are partly extinct. So those are this is a take-home message. I mean, we're talking this for decades now. Here is more information about the project of the Museu Nacional. We all have to join our forces. It's very important for Brazil to have that museum back. And those are some of the sponsors, I mean, the main sponsors, you know, UNESCO, which kind of, UNESCO does not sponsor, but they help us to organize, they get resources, and they help us with the project. And BNDES, Bradesco, Instituto Cultural Vale. And here, I would like to finish, although before I completely finish, I do have a small video, another 2 minutes, that you will be able, but you did not finish. I did not ask you to finish, Zao. I'm gonna fire you as a presenter because I also want to say we have a very nice night today. This is one of the kids that was just there when we had our 250th anniversary, and of course, hope everyone will have a very nice time. And now we will have the video. Okay, but you get the picture. So thank you, Sao. You get it read. It's happening. I cannot make this up. It's happening, and we really need support. We need support. So spread the word around. I have a couple more of those. I have them out in Portuguese, so please help yourself. It is really a very important task that we're doing, and it's for Brazil. But there is also a possibility to show that culture can bring nations and people together. This is very important, and hopefully we're gonna get support. And one way or another, I can only tell you, it is going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alex. Okay.
Don't come near to my fossils.
I'm actually bringing good news, but I'm not going to spoil it today, so you'll have to wait for a little bit. I just wanted to ask, one of the first actions I remember seeing after the fire went on involved doing some tomography, I think, of the mummies. They were doing that by the time, and they were like making better images, 3D stuff on them. So I wanted to ask you, how important you think it is for the museum to get better records of stuff that was lost?
That is fundamental. That was one of, no, it's easy now to say that we did or didn't. You know, it's kind of easy after the fact. But the fact is, even before I became the director, we knew our problems. You know, it's very important for everyone to understand. It wasn't the fire that sparkled us to make changes. Look, to be, I will not make this a very long story, but I'm one of those guys that's not really, you know, people know I would do changes, and I was elected. And yes, I had somebody else, you know, competing, who would not make changes. He had already been a vice director of the museum. So the museum wanted changes. All we were working. And one of the changes we wanted was to digitalize our collections. And Cristiana Cerejo was working on that. But then funds run off. But we do have a lot of her department stuff, carcinology. And so we have something. Our library, we did that. There were previous directors, wasn't me. It was previous director who digitalized all the library collections. So we did a lot. And there's something else. I will just take this opportunity to say, I mean, I feel so bad that I did not do more casts of our material and distribute it around. I did some, but I did not, I did not do that many casts. And that's something I definitely would recommend everyone to do. There's no excuse anymore for not doing, and we're gonna do it. There's something else we want to do. We really want to do that, and our biologists are already doing that. Each time you describe a new species, you have the holotypes and you have a paratypes. Take the paratypes and give them away to other institutions. So if something like that happened, at least in some other place, you will have that material. Yes, it's difficult for dinosaurs. Yes, it's difficult for pterosaurs, but it might not be that different for plant material. It might not be that might not be that difficult for invertebrates. And I mean, all we know, there are thousands of specimens. So this is a different attitude toward collection. Sharing, I think it's a key here.
Anyone else? So thank you very much, Alex.
Thank you.
So now, as we exit the room, we have one of the posters on the table, and I have some markers. So let's do that, and then group picture. Which is going to happen outside as well.